Let's set the stage. Imagine Mexico in the early 1830s. The dust of revolution has barely settled after a long, grueling fight for independence from Spain in 1821. But things don't exactly settle down. Instead, Mexico staggered into nationhood, battered and broke. Its leaders scrambling for a sense of order over a territory sprawling nearly 4.5 million square kilometers, about twice as big as modern-day Mexico. Internal power struggles raged, money was in short supply, and threats loomed both from within, rebelling regions, and from without, returning Spanish forces hovering menacingly in nearby Cuba. It's wild to look back at a map from those days. Mexico was a behemoth, stretching from the rainforests of Chiapas to the windswept plains of what's now Utah and California. But this massive size was a double-edged sword, impossible to govern centrally, especially after more than a decade of near constant conflict. There was no unifying vision, and it showed. Instead of coming together, Mexico splintered. Meanwhile, north of the border, the United States was swelling with ambition. The U.S. had just bought the enormous Louisiana territory from France, almost doubling in size overnight. But as any empire-hungry nation knows, more is never enough. Their eyes were glued on lands still held by Mexico, teeming with opportunity, but beset by chaos. Let's zoom in on Texas. By the 1830s, Anglo settlers in Mexican Texas had revolted, with a famous last stand at the Alamo, and declared their own republic in 1836. But even as Texas strutted as an independent little nation, the U.S. hesitated to scoop it up. Why? Politics. Adding another slaveholding state was a hot-button issue, and northern politicians didn't want to tip the scales. But when James K. Polk swept into the White House in 1844 with an unapologetically expansionist agenda, the gears started turning. He promised to re-annex Texas and set his sights westward. For Oregon, California, New Mexico, and the whole American Southwest. Polk actually tried to buy those lands, but Mexico refused to sell. So what did Polk do? He moved American troops into the hotly debated zone between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River. This wasn't just tragic geography. It was a powder keg. In December 1845, the U.S. formally annexed Texas. Mexico, refusing to recognize Texan independence or the U.S.'s claims, was furious. It didn't take long for things to spiral. On April 25, 1846, Mexican cavalry clashed with U.S. troops under General Zachary Taylor in disputed territory. Polk seized the chance, telling Congress that American blood had been shed on American soil. War was declared, though notably, Mexico never formally declared back. Now here's something often missed. Was this war provoked by the U.S.? Even military men like Ulysses S. Grant, who later became president, thought so. Grant admitted the U.S. provoked the first shots to win support at home for a war that many saw as a blatant land grab. At the time, though, Mexico was simply in no shape to fight back, a reality shaped by years of chaos and the bizarre political comebacks of Antonio López de Santa Anna. If Mexican history feels dizzying, that's because leaders like Santa Anna spent decades switching sides. He was for independence, then for the Spanish Empire, then for a republic, then a dictatorship. He'd be president, get kicked out, plot a return, get exiled, then sneak deals with both the U.S. and his own countrymen just to grab power again. When war broke out, Santa Anna connived his way back from exile by promising American officials land in exchange for safe passage. Then double-crossed everyone and declared himself president as soon as he crossed the border. Let's talk battles. U.S. forces hit hard and fast. At places like Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma, Zachary Taylor's disciplined army routed Mexican defenders. In what's now New Mexico, General Stephen Kearny basically marched in, claimed Santa Fe with barely a shot fired, and set up his own government. Even California flipped with shocking speed. Famous explorers like John C. Fremont helped take it with minimal resistance, and by August 1846, a U.S. flag was flying over Los Angeles. Of course, Mexico did try to fight back. Santa Anna personally led a huge army north, hoping to crush Taylor at Buena Vista. He almost pulled it off. His troops outnumbered the Americans 3-1 and even broke through their lines. But whether due to exhaustion, supply issues, or a rebellion brewing back home, Santa Anna pulled back just when victory seemed close. Some historians believe if he'd pressed harder, the outcome might have been very different. President Polk sent General Winfield Scott, one of the most underrated commanders in U.S. history, by sea to Mexico's Gulf Coast. Scott pulled off the first major American amphibious assault at Veracruz, then marched his army through brutal terrain toward Mexico City, fighting cunning battles at Cerro Gordo, Contreras, and Churubusco. By September 1847, U.S. troops had stormed the gates of Chapultepec Castle and occupied Mexico's capital itself. It's worth noting, while U.S. triumphs look almost effortless in hindsight, both sides suffered. Mexican soldiers, often poor conscripts with no love for their generals and nearly nothing in their stomachs or pockets, deserted in droves. The U.S. also faced tough guerrilla resistance, unfamiliar diseases, and constant supply problems. And then there was the uncomfortable truth. Some in Congress questioned whether it was right to swallow so much territory. So what did it all mean? The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the war in 1848, cutting Mexico nearly in half. For $15 million, far less than previous U.S. offers, America took Texas, California, and the vast expanse of the modern Southwest. Mexico, bruised and broken, had little choice. And just a few years later, the Gadsden Purchase tidied up the border, setting the stage for the map we know today. Here's something wild to think about. The land gained in this war transformed the U.S. into a continental power. But it also sowed the seeds of new conflict. Think about how the arguments over whether these territories would allow slavery fanned the flames, leading to the American Civil War. History isn't always fair, and this one's controversial. Was it destiny, as Polk claimed, or imperial greed? Is America the hero, or just a bully that took what it wanted from a weaker neighbor? Let me know what you think in the comments. Whose side would you have been on if you were alive back then? If you found this dive into history eye-opening, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the past. There's so much more to unravel. Stick around. You never know what story we'll uncover next.